allahumma salli ala sayyidina muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman. mbokki jullit yi mbokki taalibe yi ñu ngi nuyu ñëpp di ziar ñëpp di jiital ci nuyoo bi Serigne Mamor Mbacke ak mbooleem kilifa yi nga xamante ni ñoo teewe bis bi. mu mel ni rek dañoo bëgg a tàmbali programme bi ren nag ñu amal programme boo xam ne dañ ko def ci ñaari pàcc bu njëkk bi doon anglais pàcc bi ci topp doon wolof. pàcc anglais bi sax tàmbali woon nañ ko ak ndaje moo xamante ni sëñ bi amaloon na ko ak bureau exécutif fondation Khadim Rassoul of Michigan àndi ceeg ay nit ñoo xamante ni ay kilifa lañ fii ci dëkk bi. gannaaw loolu sëñ Bilal professeur of University of Michigan moom itamit dina fi am waxtaan boo xamante ni dafay jëm ci wàllu jàmm ak vision wu Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Khadim Rassoul. gannaaw loolu sunu mbokk yi nga xamante ni ñoom lañu invité yi tamit ku ci nekk dina la jox 5 minutes ngir 5 minutes gannaaw loolu yi tamit xale yi nga xamante ni ñoo séq daara ji ñoom tamit dinañ fa amal tari boo xamante ni comme ni ñu koy amalee rek at mu jot ñoom itamit ren dinañ ci tànn fukk ci ñoom ñu ñëw def tari boobu gannaaw loolu yi tamit ci la ñuy tëjee partie anglais bi. partie wolof bi ñu koy tàmbalee rek panel boo xamante ni ay borom xam-xam ñoo koy séq ñoom itamit ñuy wax ci lépp loo xam dafa jëm ci dundu Serigne Touba Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Khadimu Rasoul gannaaw loolu sëñ bi dina tëj jotaay bi. Good evening, good afternoon rather. I think you enjoying the heat today. It's very hot in Detroit, right? I was talking to one of the guests here. And he was complaining about the heat here in Michigan. So I was telling him that, okay, don't be surprised that you might wake up tomorrow and see snowflakes. So, ladies, gentlemen, welcome to the 11th annual celebration of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba's Day here in Detroit, Michigan. And on behalf of the Foundation Khadim Rassoul of Michigan, it is a pleasure and an honor for us to count you among our guests this afternoon. This event is being presided by Serigne Mamor Mbacke, and just like here in Detroit, this event are being organized across America and around the world. And the purpose of this event is to magnify the legacy of our spiritual guide, Serigne Touba Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Khadimu Rasoul, the servant of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that purpose collaborate with the mission statement of the Foundation Khadim Rassoul of Michigan. So in that essence, every year we invite community leaders, religious leaders, community organizers, friends and family to celebrate this event. In a short, we will have a presentation which will be done by Professor Bilal Ware of the University of Michigan, which will be accentuate on the life and legacy of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba with his vision in peace. But when we start with this program, I will just give my brother here, we have a resolution and a proclamation to be presented here. So we will start with that.
And present the resolution to the Sheikh.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first say thank you for having me. I'm here on behalf of State Representative Sherry Getinogo to present this tribute to you all. In observance and special observance of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day 2016, let it be known that the observance of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day is an event of true significance that provides community building blocks for African Muslims in North America. A prominent Islamic leader, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, also known as Khadimu Rasul, or the servant of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is celebrated as one of the most charismatic and effective leaders in African history. Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba leadership led him to establish the Maria Brotherhood in Senegal, West Africa. In addition, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba led a pacifist struggle against the French colonial empire. Whereas the Foundation Khadimu Rasul of Michigan is an organization striving for the betterment of Maria community in Michigan. The organization promotes the teachings of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Mbake. The Foundation Khadimu Rasul aims to support the social and economic empowerment of low and moderate income populations in the Brightmoor area. Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Days are celebrated in many major cities around the world every year. His service is recognized and commendable. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Sherry Gadinogo, State Representative of the 8th District, do hereby proclaim August 5th Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day in Michigan. In special tribute, therefore, this document is signed and dedicated to honor Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day for his life and the triumphs made throughout his community. And I am here to present this award to you all. Thank you.
kon ma traduire résolution bii nii résolution mooy proclamation bi nga xam ne dafay jóge ci congrès Michigan ñu jagleel ko Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day 2016 ñu ne na ñëpp maase te xam ne que ne Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day dafa nekk événement boo xam ne dafa am importance ci communauté africaine bi nekk Amérique du Nord. Serigne Touba Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba nekkoon leader yu gën a taxaw ci Afrique te Serigne Touba ñu xamee ko Xaadimu Rasuul moom mi nga xam ne moom mooy serviteuru prophète Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam xam ne tamit moom mooy leader bi nga xam ne moom moo ëppoon charisme ci histoire africaine. Leadership bu Serigne Touba Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba yóbbu na ko ba mu créer Mouridiya ci Afrique de l'Ouest te Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba xam nañ ne def na résistance bu puissance française résistance pacifique ci puissance française ne fii na ñëpp d'accord te xam ne que ne fondation Khadim Rassoul dafa nekk organisation boo xam ne dafay liggéey pour avancer communauté mouride bi nga xam ne dafa nekk Michigan te organisation bi tamit dafay promouvoir jàngale mu Serigne Touba. Fondation Khadim Rassoul ñoom tamit dañoo bëgg a suqal seeni membre ak population bi nga xam ne dañoo nekk fii nii ci Brightmoor te nañ ñëpp maase d'accord que ne Serigne Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day dañ koo célébrer ci dëkk yu mag yépp yu nekk ci àdduna bi chaque année liggéey bu mu def ci humanité bi na ko ñëpp xam nangu ko te félicité ko ci. kon bés bi ni tey man député wala state representative Chéri Gueye Dagnago man maay proclamer le 5 août nekk Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day fii ci état Michigan.
ginnaaw bu ñu leen nuyoo ñoo ngi am mbégte di dalal ki nga xam ne moo ko yónni mu joxe proclamation bi nga xam ne ñi ngi koy nangu ci turu communauté sénégalaise bépp ci turu fondation Khadim Rassoul wante ci turu musulman yi nga xam ne yépp ñoo nekk ci àdduna bi ndaxte lépp loo xam ne dañ ko def ngir Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba ci wàllu jàmm wante ci wàllu nit ci wàllu defar nit ci wàllu bëgg nit nekk ci lu baax ci àdduna loolu bu deñ ko dee defee Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba nekkoon musulman ba mu am ci ndam ko dafa mel ne kon lii tey jullit yépp lañ ko joxe ñu ngi leen ci sant te dinañ xamal ne ñi nga xam ne ñoo nekk fii mooy fondation Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba bi danañ fexe ba kii bi ñoom ngeen ko teg ci seen loxo mais danañ fexe tamit ba mérité ko ba nga xam ne li tax ngeen def ko muy Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba mi nga xam ne lu baax la doon doxee ñoom ñu ko fi nekkal danañ gën a téye loolu bu baax ba mu egg fi mu war a egg li ci des it mooy ni mu ko waxee Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba symbole la woon ci jamono bu nekk sax ndaxte bi mu ñëwee ci 1855 bi nga xam ne ci la ñëw ba 1927 li ëpp ci dundam boobu colonisateur français yi dañ ko téye muy lu toll ci fanweeri ak ñett yu manqué tuuti loolu yëpp dañ ko doon accuser lu bare sonal ko tëj ko kaso xajale ko ak njabootam pour defe ne moom dafay indi violence wala loo xam ne moom la ñuy tudde léegi baat bi jihad wante moom bi muy nekkee ak ñoom ci 19e siècle boobu ci la bind woon wax ne moom baatu jihad ni mu ko mën a déggee du xeex jël ngànnaay rey nit wala fetal wala nga taal ay bomb nee na loolu nunul jihad nee na jihad mooy defar nit ki mu am xam-xam nekk nit ku ragal yàlla nekk nit ku am jom qualité yi nga xam ne yépp mooy qualité humanisme loolu moom nee na moom la gise woon ne mooy baat boobu kon moom depuis lu ëpp siècle ak genn wàll ci la firee woon baat boobu nga xam ne léegi dafa mel ne dañ ko diaboliser ba nga xam ne li muy firi rek mooy mooy violence mooy def lu bon rek kon loolu kon lii tey dafa firndeel ne baat boobu mu daan firi bu yàgg àddina bi mi ngi koy soog a gën a laaj kon ñu ngi leen ci gërëm di leen sant bu baax.
So Nate, the Sheikh is thanking you, and he's thanking the state rep Sherigay Danyago for this special tribute on Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, and he's saying that he's accepting this tribute on behalf of this foundation Khadim Rasoul, accepting this tribute on behalf of all the Muslims here in Michigan, because this is a tribute indeed for the Muslim community here. And the Foundation Khadim Rasoul and its members are going to do everything to deserve this tribute. And just as you have mentioned that in the tribute, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, when he came, born in 1855 and came to the world, he has already defined the word jihad. When people was thinking that jihad was a devilish word, it was something that you're going to go and waging war against other people. So the Sheikh, I say, his only jihad was to educate people, to train people, so people can understand what is the value of humanism. So that was what it is, and just such as you have mentioned it, that was the fight of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, recognized throughout the world, and that's now pretty much like after a century what people have understood on this word. So he's thanking you, and you send his greeting to the state rep, Sherigay Danyago. So thank you so much for the mission. Thanks. Point we're going to call Fairuz Saad, Director of Immigration Affairs, to present another proclamation.
I'm here to give this proclamation to Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba on behalf of the City of Detroit and the Mayor's Office. Whereas the Foundation Khadimu Rasoul of Michigan was incorporated on December 3rd, 2002 with the state of Michigan as a not-for-profit organization. Whereas education, respect, solidarity, peace, work, and tolerance are one of the core values of the foundation. Whereas the mission of the organization is to promote well-being through socioeconomic, educational, and cultural development according to the universal and non-violent teachings of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. Whereas Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Mbaki was the foundation with Murid Sufi order in Senegal. Whereas the Sheikh Ahmadou Mor Mbaki, grandson of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, is the is the appointed ambassador of the Murid Brotherhood. Whereas the foundation of Khadoom Rasul of Michigan will celebrate the Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day on August the 5th of 2016 in Detroit, Michigan. Now, therefore, I, Mike Duggan, that's not me, Mayor of the City of Detroit, do hereby proclaim August 5th, 2016 as Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Day. In witness thereof, I have hereunto you set my hand this 15th day of July, the year of our Lord, 2016, with the establishment of the City of Detroit, the 315th. Congratulations.
Thanks. ma traduire proclamation bi ni may Mike Duggan joxe Mike Duggan mu ne bi ñu considéré que ne fondation Khadim Rasoul ñoo ngi ko enregistré le 3 décembre 2002 ci État Michigan comme organisation à but non lucratif. Aussi bi ñu nangoo considéré que ne éducation, respect, solidarité, paix ak travail, tolérance yooyu yëpp dañoo nekk ay valeurs yoo xam ne fondation bi moom la ñuy doxee ba ñu delluwaat nanguwaat que ne organisation bi seen mission mooy di liggéey boo xam ne dafay suukat xam-xam di jàngale seen membre jàngale boo xam ne dafa tënku ci jàngale Serigne Touba Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba bi ñu ñëwee considéré que ne Serigne Touba moom moo formé créé Mouridiya Sénégal aussi tamit bi ñu xamee ne Cheikh Mamor Mbacke moom mi di sëtu Serigne Touba moom mooy ambassadeuru Mouridiya aussi ñu nangu ne fondation Khadim Rasoul tamit tey jii le 5 août la ñuy célébrer bés bi ñu jaglee Serigne Touba. Donc tey man Mike Duggan maire ville de Détroit maa ngi proclamer le 5 août 2016 nekk bés bi ñu jaglee Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba fii ci Detroit. kon tey jii man maa jël Mike Duggan jël sama loxo le 15 juillet ci suñu atu boroom signé proclamation bii nii ci ville Detroit. Mike Duggan. Just acceptance speech.
kon ñu ngi koy sant ci turu fondation Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba wante ci turu ni ma ko waxee sànq rek jullit yi nekk ci àdduna bi yëpp ni mu ko waxee fondation bi dafa soxe ko ci ki ñu ko tuddee mooy Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba nga xam ne moom ay valeur loolu la moom lay gën a dundal waxtu wu nekk di ko suuxat te gi ci gën a am solo ni mu ko ci junjee mooy affaire u jàngale ndaxte moom ci 1881 bi waajuróom génnee àdduna fekkoon na ñoom ay jàngalekat lañ parce que waajuróom mën naa wax ne recteur université la woon ci jàngale wante ci anam goo xam ne jàngal nit la xëy na wante am na lu xam ne din doon na ci mooy di nga am xam-xam nga nekk nitu diine mais bi waajuram demee 1881 1882 ba 83 diggante boobu ci la yore école boobu ndaw la ci la ne nag léegi école boobu il faut ñu réformer ko réforme boobu ñu def ci la génne dëgg-dëgg yi tasawuf mooy nit ki nga xam ne dafay jaamu yàlla ànd ko liggéey ànd ko ak tamit respecté doomu aadama valeur yooyu muy valeur yu bare loolu la dajale pour moom nekk mouridisme lu bees ci diine fekk na fa ay waajuram ñu ànd ak ay mag ñu baax foofu mais dafa gis ne moom fokk mu am système bu gën a boo xam ne pour moom ñu boole ci loo xam ne xëy na mooy jaamu yàlla liggéey am xam-xam am jàmm mën a jaxasoo ak ku nekk. defe naa ne valeur yooyu moo tax ñi nga xam ne mooy communauté sénégalaise bi nekk fii te nekk ci fondation Khadimou Rassoul yéen ngeen di ñoo xam ne aussi ay valeur da ngeen ko xam. defe naa ne ci base boobu ngeen leen joxe lii kon dafa mel ne nit ki bu fekkente ne xam na lan mooy nit xam na mooy ay valeur fépp fu mu ko wane ñooña du ñu xool jëmmam du ñu xool ak néew dooleel mais dañuy xool valeur yooyu nga xam ne moom lay suuxal kon loolu ñu ngi leen ci sant di gën a xam ne rek ñun tam danañ fexe ba loolu yëpp ñu gën ko suuxal gën ko téye gën a ànd ak yéen tamit jàpp ne fii ñu nekk tey moo ko fa ñu dëkk ñoom la ñu yamale te defe naa ne li ñu fiy def sax duñ ko def fa ñu dëkk kon nag loolu tamit ñu ngi leen ci sant di ñaan yàlla mu def jàmm ci àdduna bi wante mu def ko tamit ci Amérique ci gouvernement bi ak ci seen maire Michigan day dem.
Farouz, the Sheikh is thanking you and he's proudly accepting this proclamation from Mayor Duggan. And he just gave a quick history of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. He said, just like you mentioned here on the core values of the foundation, that was the core value that has been taught by the Sheikh. Work, solidarity, education, especially education. He was born into a family that understood the value of education, and he's saying that if he even in the modern time, his father was like a president of a university, and Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba, when his parents passed away, he has inherited that school, and that's later on that he has created Muridism, which is Sufism, and he said it's not something new. He just like brought the essence of Islam or the essence of Sufism here. So he's saying that he proudly accepted this, and he hope we can work together and share all these values, because that's like he said earlier, that's like humanitarian values. And as we are here, are immigrants, we should be even like performing more than if you were home. And as a matter of fact, we do even more here than we doing home. So he's thanking you, and he's looking forward for all of us to work together in the future.
We start with this event with the Tajweed al-Quran, Quranic recitation. So I will call my brother here to perform the Quranic recitation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا ليجزي الله الصادقين بصدقهم ويعذب المنافقين إن شاء أو يتوب عليهم إن الله كان غفورا رحيما صدق الله العظيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تهتدون ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون ولا تكونوا كالذين تفرقوا واختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم البينات وأولئك لهم عذاب عظيم يوم تبيض وجوه وتسود وجوه فأما الذين اسودت وجوههم أكفرتم بعد إيمانكم فذوقوا العذاب بما كنتم تكفرون وأما الذين ابيضت وجوههم ففي رحمة الله هم فيها خالدون تلك آيات الله نتلوها عليك بالحق وما الله يريد ظلما للعالمين ولله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإلى الله ترجع الأمور كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله ولو آمن أهل الكتاب لكان خيرا لهم منهم المؤمنون وأكثرهم الفاسقون صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you. Next up, presentation by Bilal Ware of the Professor Bilal Ware of the University of Michigan. The theme for this year, Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba and the Murid Vision of Peace.
Well, I'll begin with thanks for all of you who have taken time to be in attendance today. With thanks for Sheikh Mamour Mbake for his tireless efforts in promoting understanding of the teachings of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, which is nothing other than understanding the teachings of Islam, the teachings of peace, the teachings of tolerance throughout the world. And with thanks for the board of the Khadim Rasul Foundation and for all of the brothers and sisters in this community who have worked so hard to make this event happen again this year. You have my most sincere and humble thanks at the invitation and the honor to say a few words about Ahmadu Bamba Mbake. And I'll begin with an apology after the thanks, which is that I teach a 14-week class on the history of Islam in Africa at the University of Michigan that is rooted in the teachings of Ahmadu Bamba and the approach to Islamic knowledge of the Muridiyya. And we ain't got 14 weeks. We've got about 30 minutes. So this presentation is, as the Chinese expression goes, it's going to be like looking at flowers from horseback. So I encourage all of you to take this as an opportunity to get to know Ahmadu Bamba better. And that goes as much for the murids that are sitting here as it goes for the guests that are sitting here as well. It's incumbent upon all of us because frankly, the world needs Ahmadu Bamba today. And the United States of America needs Ahmadu Bamba more than ever. And the city of Detroit needs Ahmadu Bamba more than ever. We are living today in a world that seems consumed with a suicidal and homicidal pathology. Everyone wants to hurt everyone else. Everyone wants to knock people over the head and take their stuff. And the message that Ahmadu Bamba brought at the end of the 19th century and in the first quarter of the 20th century in Senegal was nothing other than the message that was brought by the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, nothing other than the message that was brought by Jesus, alayhi salam, nothing other than the message that was brought by John the Baptist, nothing other than the message that was brought by the prophet Zechariah, nothing other than the message that was brought by all of the prophets of the children of Israel, back to Moses, back through Enoch, back to Adam himself. The message ain't changed. Stop knocking each other over the head and taking each other's stuff. Stop sleeping with anything you find out in the street. Try to be decent to one another. Be generous. Be kind. And that was the beginning of the teaching that Ahmadu Bamba brought in the middle of the 19th century. And I'll also just say a personal word of thanks to Sheikh Mamor and to every last member of this community, the community of the Muridiyya, because as an African-American Muslim who converted to Islam at the age of 15, I began traveling to Senegal in 1996 to learn more about my people, both in the sense of as African people and as Muslims. And the Murid community was the first community to welcome me and to begin to teach me about the past of our people and to really affirm and solid understanding of the ethics of this religion. So that's a heartfelt thanks to each and every person assembled here. So what were the core of those teachings and who is this person, Ahmadu Bamba? We can't do it in 30 minutes. I've written a book that's largely about Ahmadu Bamba's approach to Islamic education. It's also about the approach to Islamic education taken by many of the other great West African scholars. These are the people that turned the African map into this. It's probably not well known by many of you, but Africa is the only continent in the world with a Muslim majority. There's more than 330 million Muslims in sub-Saharan Africa. 1 in every 6 of the world's Muslims lives in sub-Saharan Africa. And more than 1 in 4 of the world's Muslims lives on the African continent, and far more of those are darker than I am with respect to the population in the north. So if you look straight across from Senegal all the way to Somalia, you find almost entirely Muslim populations. And these, it's worth noting as we reflect on Ahmadu Bamba's legacy and the vision of peace that he established and taught. Islam did not spread to sub-Saharan Africa through any military conquest from outside of sub-Saharan Africa. There was no jihad of the sword that brought Islam to sub-Saharan Africa. Rather, it was a jihad of teaching, a jihad of learning, a jihad of scholarship. And Ahmadu Bamba was represented the efflorescence of this tradition in the 19th century, but he represented a tradition that went back more than 1,000 years. There have been jet black African people reading and writing books in the Arabic language since the 800s in Africa. They've been reading and writing books in African languages using the Arabic script for almost as long. So, and I've said this before, so those of you who know me will have heard it, but when I was a kid growing up in a DC that looked a lot like the Detroit that we find around us, when somebody walked around with their nose in a book like I did a lot, people accused you of acting white. Ahmadu Bamba Mbake was first and foremost a scholar. Out of the books that scholars have been able to catalog, there's a collection called the Arabic Literature of Africa series, and it catalogs all that we know of the writings of West African scholars over the past 500 or 600 years. There's no entry in that catalog longer than the entry for Ahmadu Bamba Mbake. It contains at least 200 distinct books authored by Ahmadu Bamba Mbake. Some of them are collections of as many as 200 distinct poems, and some of them, those poems contain as many as 5,000 or 6,000 verses. So just run the math through your head real quick. And those lovely words that you heard chanted as you came into the room, that was nothing other than the poetry of Ahmadu Bamba Mbake. These are not dead letter that are hidden in the pages of books someplace. These are poems that are recited every day within this community. Words of inspiration and spiritual sustenance that continue to sustain a community. And the words of a scholar in every sense of the word. He was not just a person who was committed to literary production and scholarly production, but also the other element of scholarship, which is teaching. Ahmadu Bamba began his life As the Sheikh established before, he came from a long line of people who specialized in the teaching of Quran and the religious sciences of Islam. So he was continuing in a family vocation. He memorized the Quran at an early age. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, I said he memorized the Quran at an early age. The tradition in West Africa, down to the present, is to not only, in some cases, to memorize the entirety of the Quran from beginning to end, but many people who actually go through this process learn to write an entire written copy of the Quran from memory without looking at it. So Ahmadu Bamba came from an established scholarly tradition. He memorized the Quran at an early age, and then he began to specialize in his two favorite subjects. In the interest of time, he studied all the different disciplines of the Islamic religious sciences, but we all have our favorite subjects, and Bamba's two favorite subjects were tasawwuf, Sufism, and poetry. And he excelled all others in these two fields. So as he was finishing his memorization of the Quran and he began studying the advanced sciences, began studying poetry, he was also teaching. And he began teaching the Quran to the Quran students in his father's school, and then he began teaching the advanced religious sciences to the people who came to his father's school as well, and that began a lifelong preoccupation with education that never ended. Bamba was teaching from that point on for the rest of his life. Even when he was somebody who was thronged by hundreds of thousands of disciples, he never abandoned the teaching of the Quran, and he never abandoned the teaching of advanced subjects. Because a person that abandons education has lost everything. So who is Ahmadu Bamba? Scholar, Sufi. What is a Sufi? I'll offer a lesson that was given to me the first time that I went to Tuba in 2001. A venerable old sheikh of the Muridiyya called Sheikh Ibrahim Allah Ngabu. May God be well pleased with his works. He passed away not too long ago. One of his sons is here. Where's Abdul Salam? I'll try to be brief, but this is a story that explains Sufism, and it's taught from the Muridiyya order, so I'll share it with you. Sheikh Ibrahim Allah was in his 80s when I came to know him in Tuba in 2001. And he would sit from about 9 o'clock in the morning till about 7 o'clock p.m., only getting up for the prayers of the day, and he would receive people throughout the day. People would come in and petition him any kind of problems they were having, any difficulties they were having. If there was some material way he could help them resolve it, he would do so. And if all he could do was raise his hands and pray for them, then that's what he would do. But he would sit from the beginning of the day till the end of the day every day. And in the courtyard of his house, you would often find 200 or 300 people assembled, sitting and waiting to see him. And during that time, there were young men circulating between all the groups of the people that were attending, pouring out hot tea, pouring out hot coffee, bringing snacks around if it wasn't mealtime, bringing hot meals around if it was mealtime, free of charge, taking care of the people. And he sat there like that every day, so I did not like to bother him. But one day he called for me, and he said, Bilal, I want to tell you a story. I said, okay, Sheikh. He said, do they have farmers in your country? I said, yes, Sheikh, we have farmers in my country. He said, good, then you'll understand the story that I'm going to tell you. He said, I want you to imagine Nyari Surga, 2 young men, bachelors. They have nothing in this world, they're not established. They want to establish themselves in this world, but they have no means. They come to a powerful master of a house. He has fields that extend in every direction. And they submit themselves to him in the hopes that he'll be their host. So he offers them an agreement. He says to them, from the time of the morning prayer to the time of the midday meal, you will go out and you will work on my field. And I will give you your midday meal. And in the afternoon, you have your own field that you can go out to, and the proceeds of your field belong to you. So these young men are thrilled because they think one good harvest and they're going to have the come up. They are going to be able to establish themselves, get a house, pay a dowry, get married. They're going to have the good things of this life. So they go out in the rainy season. Raise your hand if you've been to Senegal in the rainy season. What's the humidity like in Senegal in the rainy season? Murderous. 115 degrees the last time I was in Tuba, and that was April. Yeah, I said April. And that's before the humidity kicks in. So they go out in the rainy season, and working on the fields in the rainy season is hard work. You sweat. You sweat. So they go out to the fields, and the sheikh says, so they go out. And they go out to the field, and they work on the field from the morning until the noon, just as the master had said. And then they go out and they work in the afternoon on their own fields, and they do this throughout the rainy season. And then they come back in, and the first of the two young men brings the harvest from the master's field, and he pushes it up to the foot of the master. And the master says to him, you don't know this, but I was watching you the whole time. I saw that you did not cheat me so much as a single drop of sweat, preferring work on your own field to work on mine. And I saw that you did not cheat me so much as a single grain of this millet that you now bring to me. You have fulfilled your contract. Have your garden. So the man goes off happy. Now the second young man comes up, and he doesn't have the proceeds from the master's field. He has the proceeds from both fields. And he pushes them up to the foot of the master. And he says to the master, whether you give me one grain or you give me both fields is all the same to me, because I ain't come here for no grain. I came here because I wanted to be close to you, because I love you, because I wanted to serve you, because I wanted to see you every day. So then the sheikh says to me, he says, Bilal, which of the two young men is the master of the house going to love? What's the answer? I said it has to be the second one, sheikh. He said, of course it is. He says, this is the example of Islam and Sufism. If you fulfill the contract that God gives you, you pray 5 times a day, you fast, you fulfill the outward observance of Islam, God has promised you a garden, and he's true to his promise. He'll give it to you. But if the question is, how do you become beloved of God, then it requires a different approach. It requires doing everything just out of love for God, not out of any desire for any kind of material reward, either in this world or in the next, just because he's worth love. The Sufi way is the way of aspiring to make yourself into someone worthy of God's love. And Ahmadu Bamba was a living exemplar of the Sufi way. He spread the Islam of love, he spread the Islam of peace everywhere that he went. He was also, because he loved his Lord, he also loved the weakest and the meekest and the humblest amongst his Lord's creation. Ahmadu Bamba, and I wrote about this in my book on the history of Islamic education, The Walking Quran. One of the things that he was most known for was for extending basic Islamic education to former slaves. In a time when social prejudices in Senegal against people of slave background were acute, Bamba wasn't worried about all that. He didn't care if you came from a slave background. He didn't care if you came from a background of so-called casted status. If you were committed to serving the community and committed to learning Islam, he would appoint you as the imam. And if you came from a high status background and he thought that you needed to be knocked down a peg, he would have you fetching water for 6 or 8 months while you were studying with him. There was no social status that mattered to Ahmadu Bamba except the index of human piety and human goodness. Everything else was irrelevant. But what that meant in practical terms was laboring tirelessly in the world to try to make this unjust world a more just place. So when you see people like Sheikh Mamour Murtada Mbake flying from one city to the next day after day, visiting each one of these cultural centers, know that he's engaged in a continuation of the same mission. And there's much more that I could say about Bamba as a social reformer, but in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving. One of the other key places where Bamba innovated in significant ways was in making sure that women's education was respected, which was not always the case before the middle of the 19th century. And amongst his daughters were many who were accomplished scholars and authors, writing in the Arabic language, but especially writing in the Wolof language using the Arabic script. And he established, with the help of one of his earliest and most, sorry, I didn't see that the cord had come undone. Did you guys see the pictures of his daughters? Okay. To err is human, but to really foul things up, you need a computer. Let's see if we can get this right. Okay. Along with the help of one of his earliest and most illustrious disciples, Sheikh Ibra Fall, Bamba established a culture of service within the Muridiyya. This was the thing that was most striking to me about the Murid community when I first went to West Africa in 1996, is that as soon as somebody makes a request for anything, 10 Murids jump up to go fulfill the need. It was astonishing. Because I think that one of the things that the experience of slavery and Jim Crow and racial oppression in this country has done to our people, it has diminished and demeaned the value of work in our eyes. But what I found in West Africa, and specifically within the Murid community, was the idea that work is ennobling. It's part of service of God. Ligay ci jamu Yalla la bokk. And again, there's much more that could be said about that, but in the interest of time, we'll keep it moving. So on to the Murid vision of peace. The Murid vision of peace is rooted in, it's amazing because Sheikh Mamour literally just used the words in his, what he was mentioning in Wolof, it's rooted in Islamic humanism. It's rooted in Islamic humanism. What is Islamic humanism? What does that mean? It's an understanding that's rooted in the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam on what the value of a human being actually is. It's the understanding that the human being is the most favored of God's creation, that the potential that exists in every single human being is something that if you could see it with your eyes, would blind you. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that if the light of even a weak believer were to be uncovered, it would blind everything between the surface of the earth and the heavens. Human beings are that extraordinary and that powerful. So it means respecting every single individual human being, whatever their origins, whatever their background. There was a very famous story when Bamba first started to become established as a Sufi and a scholar in the 1880s. It was a time when slavery was still legal in most of Senegal. And someone came and made an offering of a gift of a slave to Ahmadou Bamba. And Bamba said to him, people in the audience will know what he said. He asked the man, he said, "You own him?" The man said, "Yes." And he said, "Soko mome, yama mom, ndax maag mom ñoo bokk borom." He said, "If you own him, then you own me, because he and I have the same master." At a time when some other Muslim religious scholars were making compromises on slavery, Bamba refused it flatly. because of that great value that is in every single human being. And that didn't translate to a sense of kind of pride in the negative sense of the word. Bamba cautioned people against being proud in a haughty sense. He very famously, in one of his great books, Masalik al-Janan, he said, the cure for pride is to contemplate how your body was made. He said, you start out as a nasty drop of sperm, you live your life as a walking sack of feces, and you end your life as a corpse, odious and rotting. You are all the children of Adam, and it is from dirt that you were created. None of you is any better than anybody else. Nobody gets to claim superior origin, superior background. The fact that the human being has this elevated place in the Quran doesn't have anything to do with us being particularly important in these little bodies or being able to claim something on that. No, no. God sees the condition of hearts and he sees the condition of deeds. Outward forms are of no significance. But every single human being is worthy of respect, and we need to struggle to preserve the dignity of every human being. Also, and this is, I guess, a good story for the city council people and the other politicians that are in the room, because it's an underappreciated aspect of traditional Islam in West Africa, and also specifically of the Murid approach, is that there's a very old, literally 1,000-year-old tradition of separating religious authority from political authority in West Africa. It's the separation of church and state. Now here, we evolved the separation of church and state largely to protect the state from excessive influence from the church. In West Africa, it was the opposite. Religious scholars actually sought distance from political authority in order to protect the church, so to speak, from too much direct influence from the state. And there's a very famous story about an incident in Ahmadou Bamba's life that helps to express the way that he thought about this, even if it is perhaps slightly pointed with what it says about some categories of politicians. It's a funny story, so I'll tell the story anyway. So after Ahmadou Bamba's father, Momar Anta Sali, had passed away, his father had served as a judge for one of the most important rulers in West Africa at the time. And so they extended an offer to Ahmadou Bamba to come and serve at the court of the king. Now, Bamba thought that this was a particularly unjust king, so he was not interested in this offer in any way. And he politely refused the invitation many, many times because he didn't want to be too close to this king. But they kept insisting, So finally he sends a letter explaining his refusal. Now, the king doesn't read, he has things read to him by his scribe. So the scribe opens the letter, and he begins to read the letter, and he says it begins with greetings and greetings of peace, and then he says, oh, I can't read this letter. He said, what's wrong with the letter? He says, no, it's nothing wrong with the letter. It's just that it's very offensive. It hurts me. I'm not going to read it. Like, what does this say? No, this injures me personally. I am offended as a man by what is said in this letter. What does it say? I'm not going to read it. Read it. Bamba quotes a saying from Muhammad ibn Maslama, who was one of the early scholars of Islam, that compares the religious scholar who chases around the coattails of a king to a fly that feeds on a pile of feces. The king says to him, I don't know what you are so upset about. He's comparing you to a fly. He's calling me a pile of... Now, the point is not that all politicians are piles of that. The point was that it's improper for religious scholars to go constantly chasing after political authority. That's not their role. The role of religious scholars is to provide moral and ethical counsel to people that have political power. And that the role of people that have political power is to do exactly what the council people and the judges and the private people that provide immigrant services in this room have done. They come and make the visit to the religious community. It's not for the religious community to go chasing around after power. It's rather the other way around. But this is an important lesson, especially today, when you've got armed lunatics that are nothing but, the Muslim version of Columbine shooters, going around saying that what Islam needs and requires is the establishment of an Islamic state. This is precisely not the lesson that West African history has taught for the last 1,000 years, and Bamba's commitment to the separation of the religious and political estates was uncompromising. He did not think that political authority was where the spiritual progress of his community lied. And lastly, nonviolence, and perhaps most importantly, nonviolence. People talk a lot about nonviolence and peace nowadays, but the Murid commitment to nonviolence is not a post-9/11 tacked on fake Gandhi commitment to nonviolence. It is rooted in the very foundation of the Murid community. It's rooted in the founder himself, and it was rooted in a positive articulation of Islamic doctrine that said that the time for spilling blood ended with the first generations of soldiers who fought for the preservation of the religion of Islam in the first decades, and after that, no one had the right to declare jihad. So for Bamba, as a legal matter, the time for jihad ended with them. No one has the right to proclaim it anymore. And anyone that does is someone who is trying to have the things of this world, not the things of the next. This was an uncompromising legal position, but it was also rooted in his deep spirituality and his Sufi experience. And I'll end with a story that illustrates that, and it'll have to be the briefest telling of this story that I've ever given. But in the interest of time, I'll tell it even if some people have heard me tell it before. Because it's also about Ahmadou Bamba's harsh and bitter experience of exile. For those of you that know a little bit about his story, the French colonial regime ironically accused him of planning a jihad, even though he was sworn never to lift a sword. And they sent him into exile for a period of 7 years and 9 months. During the first year and a half of that time, he didn't know whether his family was alive or dead, and they didn't know whether he was alive or dead because they didn't allow communication. And when the white people took you away, you didn't come back. When the French regime killed you, you stayed dead. Except that this story didn't turn out that way. So the story is about what happened the year before Ahmadou Bamba was sent away into exile. And it's a story that's literally a Murid vision of peace. I say vision because it was a visionary experience that Bamba had during the last few days of the month of Ramadan in the year before he was sent away into exile. So he was in the mosque in Touba, not this big, beautiful mosque, which was built with the cooperation of the French colonial regime much later on, and also by the Senegalese state, but a very small, humble wooden mosque. And he was spending his 7th year in the city of Touba at that time. And in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan, he would, like many of the pious people, lock himself in the mosque for seclusion and not come out until the month was over. And during that time, he had a vision. He saw the Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, peace be upon him, appear to him as I appear before you, like a creature of flesh and blood right before his eyes. He saw him inside the mosque. Now, he had seen him before as a figure veiled behind light. He had had dreams of him before, because the people of the Sufi way will often have spiritual experiences where great saints from the past or prophets come to them and they have visions of them in dreams and sometimes in a waking state. But something was different about this, because he saw him like a creature of flesh and blood, and because there was no veil and it wasn't a dream, he saw things that he didn't see before. And this actually goes to the heart of understanding the Murid understanding of why peace and nonviolence is so important. So he sees the Prophet Muhammad, and because there's no veil, he sees something that he's never seen before. The Prophet ﷺ is surrounded by a throng of people on all sides. He doesn't understand what this is. So after they exchange greetings, the Prophet says to him, Assalamu alaikum ya Hadim Rasul. Peace be upon you, O servant of the messenger. Peace be upon you, O my servant. Bamba returns the greeting and then says to him, Messenger of God, who are these that are with you? Who are all these people? What's going on? He says, these are the people of the Battle of Badr. They never leave my side, not even for a moment. Now, what is the Battle of Badr? The Battle of Badr was the first military conflict in the history of Islam. It was a time when the Meccan population, with an army of between 900 and 1,000, was trying to actually extinguish the very existence of the Muslim community, and there were 313 soldiers fighting on the sides of the Muslims against 900 plus soldiers on the other side. People who were there that day said that there were a grand total of 6 swords, 2 suits of armor, and 8 horses on the side of the Muslims. Many went out to battle literally with sticks and rocks, fighting against an armed and armored army on horseback that came from Mecca, and they defeated them. The people of Badr routed their enemies, and on that day, the preservation of Islam was guaranteed. So he said, these are the people of Badr, they never leave my side even for a moment. In that moment, Bamba began to conceive a desire in his heart. He said, how do I join their company? I love you. And I too want to be someone who is never absent from your presence. The Prophet says to him in this vision, this thing that you ask is going to be difficult, because the ones you see with me spilled blood when they didn't want to spill blood. And they had their blood spilled when they didn't want to have their blood spilled. And the time for spilling blood ended with them. So you have no sacrifice that you can offer that will make you worthy of their measure. Now you can imagine Bamba would be crestfallen by this, but the Prophet is very kind, very gentle. He says, but I come with good news. Today you will become the Qutb al-Zaman. No, astaghfirullah. He said, in 3 months you will become the Qutb al-Zaman. The Qutb al-Zaman is the axial pole of the time, the Sufi saint who, because of their interior spiritual qualities, are the centerpiece of human existence at any given moment. And so this is very good news for an aspiring Sufi to know that in 3 months he'll become the axial pole of his age. But then the Prophet says, but this is only a formality. If you like, I can make you the pole beginning today. And Bamba says to him, and the conversation takes place in Arabic, but the narration of it comes down in Wolof, so I'll give the Wolof. He says, he said, that would be lovely, that would be beautiful, but my ambitions now surpass this. Now that I know that there are people who never leave your side, my heart can't settle for less than that. So the Prophet ﷺ says to him, do you think you're the only one that ever loved me? All of the great Sufis love me the way that you love me. And I appear to them the same way that I'm appearing to you. This thing that you ask is a thing that's neither been asked nor given before. And Bamba says to him, listen, I don't know what you want from me. I've told you how much I love you. I've told you that I can't be content with less than you. And I'm willing to pay whatever cost to join their company. He says to him, are you sure? He says, yes, I'm sure. He says, fine. He said, then you are going to have to go through ordeals, difficulties, and hardships. And you must go out and face your enemies in your time the way that they faced their enemies in their time, but you are forbidden from spilling so much as a single drop of blood. If you spill so much as a single drop of blood, your compact with me is broken, and you are not of me and I am not of you. When I say that the Murid commitment to nonviolence is not post 9/11 tacked on, it seeped into the very pores of Ahmadu Bamba. So he agreed, oh, there's one last part, and he said, and you have to leave this city that you love, this city of Tuba. Because when you came here and you established this place, you prayed to God in my name that he would protect it until the day of judgment, and that prayer has already been answered. Tuba is protected until the last day. So if you're going to face your enemies in your time, then you need to leave this city that you love, and Bamba never lived there again. The greatest commemoration in the Muridiyya is not Bamba's return from exile after 7 years and 9 months. The Magal of Tuba, the day where 3 or 4 million people come to that city of Tuba, is the celebration of the day that he accepted that agreement, the day that he was sent away in exile. Because his exile and his suffering and his wrongful imprisonment and the fact that he lived the rest of his life after he returned even from that exile under house arrest, those were understood as the wages that he needed to pay in order to be near to his beloved, in order to become someone whom God would love. So we are very pleased to be able to share just a few words with you about the vision of peace of the Muridiyya and about the deeply humanistic values that were taught by Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba Mbake, radiallahu an, and that were continued first by his youngest son, Sheikh Murtada, and that are continued now by his grandson, Sheikh Mamour Mbake. If there's any good in what I said, it comes from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and all the mistakes are mine. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Of Islam. We'll continue with this program. Before we close this section, I want to have a couple of our guests will address the audience. The Honorable Judge Deborah Thomas of the 3rd Judicial Circuit of Michigan and the Police Commander, Mr. Todd Beddison. And I want to, on behalf of the Foundation Khadim Rasul of Michigan also, I want to thank the police, Detroit Police, because every time we have events such as like this, they show us here and they show up and show us their support. So we thank you very much for your availability to our foundation. So I will have the Judge Honorable, Your Honor.
Good evening. Truly, it has been an educational experience filled with love and peace and strength and uplifting. And I am so grateful that I was invited to participate in a wonderful evening. I thank you. I thank you. I am Judge Deborah Thomas. I tell people I am the people's judge, Judge Deborah. I serve on the Wayne County Circuit Court. And I am a strong believer in restorative justice, where you find the ill that created the condition that caused the harm, so that you can heal the condition that caused the sorrow that created the harm. And thus, you bring the cycle of damage to an end. I want to continue to provide a service, not just to Wayne County, and I'm a resident of Detroit, where I am so grateful you have come to be with us and bring all of the wonderful attributes that you have. I want to serve you statewide. Statewide. It is our diversity that makes us great, because we learn from one another the value of education, peace, love, extending a helping hand, knowing that you do not make yourself better by pushing someone else down, but you make all of us better by lifting each other up. I thank you for allowing me to be a part of this evening. I hope that you will help me to help you on a statewide level in the near future. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Beddison.
Assalamu alaikum. It is truly my pleasure to have been invited here. I'm Commander Bettison, representing the Chief of Police, Chief James E. Craig. And I just want you all to know that the Detroit Police Department is with you. We support you. And I'm extending an invitation to you all to join the Detroit Police Department. Your sons, your daughters, we have to ensure that the Detroit Police Department is truly your police department. We need more Senegalese on the department. Wouldn't that be awesome? So I've learned so much. I've learned so much today, and I'm humbled to even be in your presence. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
So that will close this section of the program for today. We will have a Quranic recitation by the Foundation Khadim Rasul of Michigan, Quranic School weekend after program. And we want to thank you, take this opportunity to thank you again for your availability. Mbokk yi kon mel na ni waxtu waa ngi jege si daanaka xam naa li ci topp mooy xale yi nga xamante ni ñoo seq daara ji ñoo war a tari ren comme niñ ko daan defee rek at yi yëpp kon buñ jullee ba pare ci loolu la ñuy jàll. Sunu mbokk yi nga xamante ni tamit ñoom lañu invité woon ñoom ñu bàyyi leen sëñ bi yeewi leen bu ko defee waa organisation am yu ñu leen defal foofu. bu ko defee léegi ci kanam xam naa ni dinañ xale yi nga xamante ni waa daara ji mën nañoo jege si bu ko defee buñ waajalee waxtu bi ba pare ñu jàll ci programme boobu.
cafeel ak rafet njortu ak wuulit ku fab yetti jox ko xam ngeen ji paas ma far wax la nag kuy saxaaru ngërëm ba dootoo ko reere doo reere paas saxaaru ngërëm moo di tey Bamba mi ne cas nag sa mbir jox ko looloo di paas ma tagg Bamba ak waxi Bamba ak jëfi Bamba ak gaayi Bamba di kenn waxam di kenn jëfam di kenn du Bamba gisunu kenn xamunu kenn déggunu kenn ku mel ni Bamba du maasum furi du maasum bu rekki kàngam askiya Bamba waxam ja day set jëfam ja day set jëmmam ja day set sanga di Bamba foo fekk waayam day gëni baayam gëni nijaayam kay waayi Bamba ku àndul ak moom dara àndul ak moom yàlla bëggul moom ko dëddu Bamba dama yar ba ma amub yar te teguma yar maa sant Bamba ku bëgg yàlla ak topp yàlla ak xol bu sell na fekki Bamba xam na boroomam xam na moroomam raw nay moroomam kerestu Bamba day xëy di jàngal nit ba mu mokkal te du ko bindal ci yàlla Bamba ku Bamba jàngal nga mën a jàngal képp ku dikkul siyaare Bamba ñépp a ngi may yéem man maa ngi lay yéem nu bokk lay yéemaa ngi Bamba ñépp a ngi may soow man maa ngi lay soow nu bokk lay soow waare nga Bamba jëm nga ci yàlla jëmee ci yàlla ñu soxla yàlla jaajëf Bamba yéefar ni day tëb jullit na day tëb ku nekk na day tëb fussi la Bamba yéefar ni day rey jullit na day roy ñu boole rek rey ngir tële Bamba mëneefu laa rey ku la fexee rey bana la Bamba man jéema maa rey te jéema maa rey damay fexee bay sa tool yi Bamba démb amoo maas te ji amoo maas doo am ëllëg maas kenn nga Bamba defar nga lépp defar nga fépp boo ko ci Bamba solar ca dem na sab coono wëy na sa may gi ñëw na doo ñeete Bamba saw kañ ron na saw tagg jon na ma tagg la jon na ma kañ la Bamba xare nga fépp dàq nga fépp wusal nga fépp nooyal nga Bamba ko nga je xam na gabon nga xam na maa yomba xam ne ne mbër nga Bamba lambar na xam na bër wëli xam na baafali xam ne ne hum nga Bamba ku naa kiree ngeey karambisa ngeey kablambisa ngeey ndar xam na Bamba ndakaaru xam na waa Mbakke xam na waa dawme xam ne ne lëf nga Bamba waa dex gi gis na waa jéeri gis na waa fépp gis na sa jëf ci Bamba bismillah bismillah yi may jógati tàggu rabbu sil isati bay Musa Kalaay royati soxna jaaralaay wayati bismillah yi may jógati tàggu rabbu sil isati bay Musa Kalaay royati soxna jaaralaay wayati maa ngi jóg di sotti xalima sama daajana sëpp ma way wu nekk naa bind ma soxna jaara xette tilima wayu jaara day fasu war ku dundul nga war du ko war na nga yeewu takk sa war am tegin nga soo di ko war jaara 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 kii la kenn du ko xam mol ba tuuti rek la ca xam ci tuuti taxati la xam jaara yàlla rek ko ko xam soxna jaara moo bari ndam loolu wóor na ñépp a ko xam gaynde ab ragal du ko jam xol ga rek moo jarayam Seex Musaa Ka moo njëkk a way soxna jaara ñépp di way ma tamit ma jóg di ko roy soxna jaara moo jara way am na diine boole ca ngor yeewu lool te takk sawar su ma saan di soq fa jar kursu yoot aras di sabar kuur gu dal ñu soqi fa bal kuy malaaka jóg di yëgal ñépp xam ne ki ñu war a fal nit ku ñu la leen di yëgal Bamba am juróom ñetti at àll nekk ci xat-xat waaye ay jëfam dafa mag Bamba rey jabeel mu fi mag mu ni jasi di gaawaan fal ko may ko luy baawaan jar na bàyyi Seex Usmaan Bamba jox ko ay kiimaan Baay Musaa Ka jël xalimaam way fi jaara mi sunu maam Bàcc Njaay jël xalimaam dam sambu sos ci xelam na jigéen ñi roy jaara góor ñi sant maam jaara maami Fallu ak baara mooy ki tax nu sos daara jërëjëf sëriñ Daam jërëjëf
ñu ñaanoon leen ñoom ñi nga xam ne ñoo daan def tari bi ñu may seeni rakk ñoom it ñu mën a feeñal seen yéene waaye bokk na ci xale yooyu sëriñ Daam Seen ak Cheikh Anta Seen ak soxna Faatu Njaay ak Faatu Cheikh Taal ak Cheikh Njaay ak Moustapha Taal ñoom dañ leen di sant bu baax ndax ay xale yu jàmbaare lañ yoo xam ne ñoom ñoo waroon a ubbi tari bi waaye ñoom bi ñu gisee ne at mu jot ñoom daañ ko def ñu bëggoon ren ñu tànn ci xale yi nga xam ne daaw ñu ko faral def ñoom it ñu feeñal seen yéene muy xale yooyu mu tudd gis neen ñoom it feeñ nañ ci kuréel bi muy kuréelu tuutànk yi nga xam ne tàmbali nañ ko ren te jàng fi njàng mu am pësteef muy xasida googu muy rabbi maa yasrahu ñu war leen a ñaanal bu baax nag ndax ay xale lañ yoo xam ne buñ leen toppatoo tàggat leen rek incha allah daañ mën a dem ba wuutu mag ñi kon ñoo ngi ciy sant baax kon ni ñuy def rek léegi xam naa dañuy tàmbalee ci xale yi rek ñu tànn ci ay xale ñu tari ñu as lëf ci alxuraan kon ñoo ngi jëkk a woo Ahmadou Sène Abdou moo nuy taril suratul xalam yi noonu wal xalam.
asalaamaaleykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. a'uuzu billahi mina shaytaani rajim. bismillahi rahmaani rahim. نون والهلم ما يسرون ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك الأجر غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق حسيم فستبصروا ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين فلا تطع المكذبين ودوا لو تدهنوا فيدهنون ولا تفتح كل علاء مهين هامات مشاء بنميم مناع للغير مهتد أثيم هتول بحت ذلك سنيم أن كانت أعمال وبنين إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا على أساطير الأولين سنأتيهم على خرطوم إن بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذا أقسموا لا يسرمنها مسبحين ولا يستثنون فتخفى عليها طائف من ربك وهم نائمون فأصبحت كالصريم فتنادوا مصبحين أن اغدوا على حرثكم إن كنتم سارمين فانطلقوا وهم يتخافتون أن لا يدخلنها يوم عليكم مسكين وغدوا على حرد هادرين فلما رأوه قالوا إنا لضالون بل نحن محرومون هلا أوصتم ما علمه لكم لولا تسبحون قالوا سبحان ربنا إنا كنا سالمين فأقبل بعضهم على بعض يتلاومون قالوا يا ويلنا إنا كنا طاغين هذا ربنا أن يبدل لنا خيرا منها إنا إلى ربنا راهبون كذلك العذاب ولعذاب الآخرة أكبر لو كانوا يعلمون إن للمتقين عند ربهم جنات النعيم أفنجعل المسلمين كالمجرمين ما لكم كيف تحكمون أم لكم كتاب فيه تدرسون إن لكم فيه لما تهيرون أم لكم أيمان علينا بالغة إلى يوم القيامة إن لكم لما تحكمون سلهم أيهم بذلك السعيم أم لهم شركاء فليأتوا بشركائهم إن كانوا صادقين يوم يكشف عن ساح ويدعون إلى السجود فلا يستطيعون خاشعة أبصارهم ترهقهم ذلة وقد كانوا يدعون إلى السجود وهم سالمين فسلني ومن يكذب بهذا الحديث سنستدرجهم من حيث لا يعلمون وأملي لهم إن كيدي متين صدق الله العظيم
tool nii non demal toog
moo tax kon dañuy jàll ci Xaadim Njaay sëriñ Xaadim Njaay Xaadim Njaay moom nuy tari suuratul jinn
ok asalaamualeykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh auzu billahi min asheytaani rajim bismillahi rahmani rahim qul hiya ilayya an xustamaha nafarun min aljinni fa xaalu inna samixna qur'anan xajaban yahdi ila rusdi fa amanna bihi wala nusrika bi rabbina ahadan wa innahu taxaala jaddu rabbina mattaxasa saaxibatan wala waladan wa innahu kaana yaxulu safixuna alallahi satatan wa inna sananna an lan taxuula linsu wal jinnu alallahi kasiban wa innahu kaana rijalun min al linsi yaxusuuna bi rijalin min al jinni fasaaduhum raxaaxan wa innahum sannu kama sanantumu an lan yabxasa allahu axadan wa inna lamasna samaa fa wajadnaha mulli'at harasan sadidan wa suhuban wa inna kunna naxudu minha maxaahida listamhi faman yastamihi laana yajid lahu sixaaban rasadan wa inna la nadri asarun urida biman fil ardi am arada bihim rabbuhum rasadan wa inna minna salihuna wa minna duna salika kunna taraixa xidadan wa inna sananna an lan nuxjisa allaha fil ardi wala nuxjisahu xaraban wa inna lama samixna alxude amanna bihi faman yumin bi rabbihi fala yaxaaxu baxsan wala raxaxan wa inna min almuslimuna wa min alxaasituuna fa maana aslama fa ulaika taxaraw rasadan wa amma xaasituuna fa kaanu li jahannama xataban wa an listaxaamu ala tarixati la asqaynaahum ma an xadaxan li sadaqallahu lazim
waaye njàng mi rafet na kon xaalis ñoom lay sant baax di la gërëm di la ñaan suñu borom di la dimbali ñu jàll ci rakkam Cheikh Ibra Ndiaye li doon bi Mamadou Ndiaye moom moo ñuy tëral suuratu Sams
Lamp Fall
Cheikh Ibra dakk
ci kaw dégg nga
salaamaaleykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم انكدرت وإذا الجبال سيرت وإذا الحصار فتلت وإذا الوحوش حشرت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا النفوس سوجت وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت وإذا الصحف نشرت وإذا السماء كشطت وإذا الجحيم سعرت وإذا الجنة أزلفت علمت نفس ما أحضرت فلا أقسم بالكنس جوار الكنس والليل إذا خسخس والصبح إذا تنفس إنه لحول رسول كريم ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين مطاع سماء أمين وما صاحبكم بمجنون ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين وما هو على الغيب بدنين وما هو بحول شيطان رجيم فأين تذهبون إن هو إلا ذكر للعالمين لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله رب العالمين صدق الله العظيم
jërëjëf.
ñu jàll ci Xaadim.
demal ci jigéen ñi ne.
Xaadim Diop di doomi Baye Cheikh Diop Fatim Tall Xaadim kon moom ñuy tari infital suuf infital.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waaleykum salaam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sama fatara wa isa kawakibun tasara wa isa biharu fujira wa isa huburu basira halimat nafsu ma'anama wa hara ya ayuhal insanu ma haraka birawaka karimi wazi halaka fasawaka wa adalaka Yai suratin masya akabaka kala betul kesibuna yaumadini wa inna alaikum laha fisina kiraman katibina yahlamuna ma tafluna innal abrara lafi nahimin wa innal fujara lafi jahimin yaslawnaha yaumadini wa ma hum anha yaibina wa ma adraka ma yaumuddini summa ma adraka ma yaumuddini yauma la tamliku linafsin walamru yawma yazin lillahi shay'an waladu yawma yazin lillahi sadaqallahu.
jërëjëf sëñ Xaadim.
Soogi Bay di doon Moodu Bay Soogi Bay moo ñuy tari suuratul Falaq.
waxal ci kaw dégg nga. ci kaw baax.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ikra bismi rabbikal ladzi khalaqal insana min 'alaq. Ikra wa rabbukal akram ladzi 'allama bil qalami 'allamal insana ma lam ya'lam. Hala innal insana yatha in rayhu ustahna inna illa rabbikar rajah. Harita lasiyan hai habran sasalla harita in kana hal huda aw marabitako harita in kasuba watawalla alan yahlam bainal hayare kalal lam yantin naswahan nasiyatin kazibatin hasiyatin fayarahu nariyu sanatu zabaniya kalalatuti waziru wa qatarib.
jërëjëf.
Amadou Ndiaye di doomi Baro Ndiaye.
bëgg ceeb
Amadou Ndiaye moo ñuy
bëgg ceeb.
moo ñuy jàngal suuratul Kawr.
asalaamaaleykum. teel.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Lam yakun alladziina kafaru min ahlil kitabi wa musyrikina munfakina hatta ta'tiyahum bayyinah wa musyrikina Rasulun minallahi lahum kufran mutahharatan fiha kutubun haymah wa ma tafraqal lazina utul kitaba illa min ba'di ma ja'atuhum bayyinah wa ma amiru illa liya'budullaha mukhlisina lahu ad-din hunafa'a wa yuqimu as-salata wa yutu az-zakata wa zalika dinul qayyim innal lazina kafaru minal kitabi wal musyrikina fi nari jahannam khalidina fiha ulaika hum khairul bariyati innal lazina amanu wa amilus salihati ulaika hum khairul bariyati jazaohum inda rabbihim jannati adnin tajri min tahtiha al-anharu khalidina fiha abadan radiyallahu anhu wa radu anhu zalika liman khashiya rabbahu sadaqallahu al-azim.
ñu jàll ci Tamba Diané di doomi Bamba Gambie Tamba moo ñu jàngal suuratul Xaasiya.
ci kaw dégg nga. léegi di sutuma la.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هل أتاك حديث غاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة حاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة إليها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرور مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت
وإلى جبال كيف نصبت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر ألم تولى وكفر فيحسبه عذاب الأكبر إن علينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم صدق الله العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج مرعى فجعلهم غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسر فذكر إن نفعت الذكر سيذكر من ينسى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى نارا كبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صلى الله عليه وسلم.
وحارياتي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الشيطان الرجيم والحاريات طبحا فمريات هدها فمخيرات صبحا فرأسنا به نكها فوسطنا به جمعها إن الإنسان لربه لكنور وإنه على ذلك لسهير وإنه لحب الخير لشديد أفلا يحلم إذا بشر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير.
Wana Ngone Ndey Kura Diop yaay naw santam Diop nga sant Diop noo sant ak ban ñaari ban la alxaari toog ban
الحياة والحسن وين كلي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحاريات ما الحاريات وما أدراك ما الحاريات يوم يكون الناس كفراسل مبثوث وتكون الجبال كالهين منفوش أمام سهولة فهو فيه سترابية وأمام الحفر مواسنه فأمه حاوية ما أدراك ما هي نار حامية. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أهيكم تكاسروا حتى تسموا محابير كلا سوف تفهمون ثم كلا سوف تفهمون كلا لو تفهمون هما يهيني لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها هنا يهيني ثم لتسألون يومئذ عن النعيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويل لكل همزة لمزة الذي جمع مالا وهدره يحسب أن ماله أخلده كلا يلبسنا بالحطمة وما أدراك ما الحطمة نار الله موقدة التي تطلع على الأفئدة إنها عليهم موصلة في حمد ممددة.
jàmbaar la te amagul ci daara ji ñetti weer am mati ko jàngal bu baax suñu doom ñëpp ko dindi jàmbaar loolu kon xam naa ne day mel ne waxtu bi def nañu xaw a xoj tuuti kon li ñu def rek mooy ñu jébbalaat kàddu gi sëriñ Aliou di sant gone yi bu baax leen ñaanit ñu gën a góorgóorlu waaye di ñaanit wayjur yi ñu gën noo jàppale bu baax
boo wootee rek
ndax ku ne xam na ne lii lu am solo la ndaw loo xam ne amagul bakkaar di tari alxuraan te nii ñuy jàng alxuraan yi dinañ ko boole di jàng seen farata diine lu bare bare ñu xam ko seen diine di jàng hadis loolu lu am solo la kon ñoo ngi sant bu baax wayjur yi di leen ñaanal ñu gën koy jàpp ndax lu am solo la dëgg la ñoom la ñuy liggéeyal waaye ñun dañuy jàppale bu baax ndax day mel ne xale yi xam ne ñoo ci gën a farlu kon ñoo ngi leen di sant bu baax bala ñuy tëj it ñuy sant itam boole asatisa jàngalekat yi nga xam ne ñoo jàpp daara ji aatu ak ñun ñu jiital Serigne Abdou Ahad Mbacké ak Serigne Mor Diop Serigne Abdou Koudou Diop ak Serigne Mame Thierno Diop ñooñu ñi nga xam ne ñoo war a teew wax yu nekk samedi dimanche ñu lay di jàngal xale yi ñooñu ñoo leen di sant bu baax daayira ko day semence yi waaye ñu leen sant ci kanam Serigne Mamour di ko seere loolu liggéey bi tam di ko seere leen ñoom seenu jàmbaar ndax li ma ko waxee samedi dimanche bu jot diggante 11 heures ba 2 heures luñ mën a def ak lu jamono xat-xat ak lu mën di kii daañu ko bàyyi ñëw ci daara ji ngir taxaw tout temps yi kon loolu ñu ngi koy seere sëriñ bi waaye di ñaan di ko ñaan ñaaral na ba loolu gën a jëm kanam ndax li ñu wax rek mboolem ñi nga xam ne moom lay sóob ci dëkk bii wala ci islam ku nga xam ne ñun ñu ci bari ay mag lañ xale yi ñëw ñu ci ëllëg kon nag war nañoo sonn xale yi war nañoo jàppale xale yi bu ëllëgee ñu mën noo wuutu ci liggéey bii su boobaa day am beneen sens ndax ñu ay xale lañ juddoo ci dëkk bi jàng ci dëkk bi te li ñu ñaan suñu borom ci barke sëriñ bi barke alxuraan ñu dem ba école bi ay sénateur ay président ay député lépp di génn ci école bi te yàlla mën na te loolu dara war ko def bu may rek ñu taxaw xale yi taxaw leen seen diine taxaw leen seen yàq kon ñoo ngi sant ñëpp di gërëm ñëpp ci turu sëriñ bi di ko taalal suñu loxo rek mu gën ñoo ñaanal ba suñu borom jàppale nu ba lépp luñ bëgg liggéeyal sëriñ Tuubaa rek ñu mën koo liggéey te lépp ñu ànd ak suñu sago ci barke sëriñ Tuubaa kon xam naa ni ñuy def rek mooy bépp xale boo xam ne bu doon jàng ci daara ji moo xam tari nga wala tariwoo ndax ni ma koy waxoon ñii lañ tànn ren ndax am na ci ñoo xam ne seeni mag ñoo doon tari daaw te ñu ngi ci école bi jàng ba léegi moo tax ñu ne kon ren nañ tànn xale yi nga xam ne daawu ñu tari ngir gën a seere rek liggéey bi rafetu liggéey bi kon ñoo ngi ñaan xale yëpp nañ ñëw ñu jox leen seen certificat ci kanam sëriñ bi bu noppee mu ñaanal.
bismillahir rahmanir rahim iqra bismi rabbikal ladhi khalaq خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى
ñu koy nuyu bu baax te di ko siyaare waaye di siyaare itam mbokkam yu baax yi nga xam ne ñoom la àndal ñu nekk fii ci jataay bi ñu mën caa tudd Serigne Abdoulaye Karam ak Serigne Moubarak Mbacké ñu teew fii ci jataay bi di fàttali ne itam ne ngan ren gi dañ ko tudde woon Serigne Afe ñoom ñu bokk ci njabootu Serigne Afe kon teew fi teewaay boobu waaye teew fi teewaay bokk ci njabootu Serigne Touba kon ñoo ngi leen di nuyu bu baax te di leen siyaare di siyaare Serigne Mountakha Mbacké ibnu Cheikh Mouhamadul Mourtada moom it teew na ci jataay bi ak Serigne Mouhamadul Mokhtar Mbacké moom Cheikh Mouhamadul Mourtada moom it teew na ci jataay bi di nuyu itam di siyaare itam sunu soxna yu tedd yi nga xam ne nekk nañ ci jataay bi muy soxna Astu Thierno bintu Cheikh Mouhamadul Mourtada moom it teew na fi ak soxna Fall Mbacké bintu Serigne Khadim Awa Ba moom Cheikh Mouhamadou Lamine Bara moom it teew na ci jataay bi Serigne Moussa Mbacké ibnu Cheikh Mouhamadul Mourtada moom it teew na ci jataay bi di rekk Serigne bi ñuy nuyu di leen nuyu te ñoog mboolem ñi nga xam ne mbooloo mi ñu àndal ñëpp ñu leen di nuyu te di leen siyaare loo itam liggéey bi nga xam ne ci lañ nekk te mooy liggéeyu Serigne Touba kon buñ dee liggéeyal Serigne bi itam ñoom ñuy bokk ci njabootu Serigne bi teewee jataay bi kon loolu itam luy dalal sunum xel la luy gunge ci liggéey bi la kon su ko defee kon ni ko Serigne Ali wax woon rek ñu daal di tàmbali waxtaan wi nag benn panel la boo xam ne ki def waxtaan yi mooy Serigne Mourtala Mbuub waaye dana ci ànd itam Serigne Abdou Salam Lo ak Serigne Ahmadou Samb moom it teew na ci dana ci jàpp ci waxtaan wi ak Serigne Fallou Fall ak Serigne Khadim Boussa imam bu New York moom it teew na fi dana bokk ci ñiy def waxtaan wi incha allah kon ni ñuy def rek ñu jox kàddu gi Serigne Aliou mu ñu tàmbali waxtaanu wala fi ñoo ngi leen sant bu baax te di leen gërëm wasalaamaaleykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakaatu.